Hello everyone, welcome to episode 5 of FPL BlackBox with Mark and I. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, just the two of us this week. Good evening, Az. I'm in good spirits. I'm all right. I'm a bit tired though.
Yeah, I was going to say, a bit tired maybe?
I'm a bit tired. Dominic Calvert-Lewin kept me up to the early hours last night, I'm ashamed to say. So.
And then didn't even go up in price.
No, he didn't go up in price. He came in with his match ball, bouncing his match ball, making a hell of a noise. No, just a dilemma of what to do with him. As I was WhatsApping you, I was texting a few other managers, hoping for pearls of wisdom.
You messaged me, and the last I heard from you was saying, I'm not going to get him in. I'm completely done.
Yeah.
No worries. And then you messaged me at 8 in the morning, but I've been up till 3 o'clock in the morning debating it.
It wasn't 3 o'clock. I stayed up to the price rises just before. I fell asleep just before. So I think, what's that, 2:30 these days? I don't know. Something like that, isn't it? So ridiculous. And so I'm kind of like not quite match fit tonight, but I'll do my best. I'm sure I'll put on a performance still, but I won't be quite as sharp as usual. But how are you feeling, Az, after what a game week? What a game week Game Week 3 was.
Yeah, it's like I have a bad game week and then I do the Scoutcast, and then just as I'm kind of getting over it, I come back and do this review. And it's like, let's keep bringing it up. Yeah, I'm right. We're going to talk about it. I mean, it's just what a weird week. I mean, it's been a really weird start to the season, hasn't it? So, I mean, the good thing is we've got lots to talk about.
Yeah, we have. And you know, we didn't wildcard, so we were quite fortunate, because I've got to say, it kind of crossed my mind a few times, but I resisted because I think I actually owned up and said, look, I'm actually not sharp enough yet to do it, because I felt actually picking an initial squad was so difficult. I didn't feel like I wanted to put myself through that again. And I'm glad I felt like that, because obviously, as we'll see later, the wildcards was it's a difficult week for people who wildcarded, because there's so many upsets, Wolves and Man City and so on. So what we covering tonight, go through it all. Penalties again, isn't it? We've got to talk about them briefly, just briefly.
Yeah, well, it's a 5-minute podcast. Get the penalty takers in. See you later.
I'll tell you what.
Subscribe to our Patreon.
For a minute, I thought, I've got to say, before obviously the Premier League have now come out and said there's going to be more leniency, but I was feeling like, God, if it goes on like this, there's not much tips you can give other than get a team for the penalty takers. But hopefully that's not going to be the case now. Yeah.
Well, you've got loads of new lovely tables for us to talk about. So we've got penalties and clean sheets. Should we react? I mean, there's been a real lack of clean sheets.
You say that, but we'll see when we get to it. You'd be surprised.
Well, I managed to get 2 last week from the 2 players I never thought I was going to get clean sheets from. So that was good. Early transfers. So we're going to talk about the strategy between making early moves or whether we should be waiting. I mean, the price rises we talked about last week, they're still weird. I mean, Calvert-Lewin again not going up last night, and then you look at all the people falling. It's a weird system at the moment with loads more falls than rises. We've got the game week preview, fixtures, our transfers and captains, if people still want to listen to them. I mean, we've both failed, haven't we? Because we had 2 successes, and then Werner, we went back, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And Sever, I've got his captaincy pick again, and he went for Werner. He actually came back to me today and said, 9 times out of 10 Werner would have delivered in that game, and he might be right. I mean, it was a frustrating watch, but then I watched KDB the next day, and actually he was probably even less involved, I would say, because he obviously dropped deep when they started chasing the game. But it was just a crazy week for that. Salah contributed to the assist, but to be honest, his performance wasn't great, was it?
No. I mean, there was no. I mean, apart from Vardy in the game that no one could have expected a hat trick from. Surely, who's the next top scorer? Like Bowen. I mean, Bowen at home to Wolves in a 4-0 win against. I mean, one of the roughs I said on the Scoutcast, there was someone who wrote in. He had 3 Wolves players going into that game. One of them is captain, and he got -1 from 3 players.
So hold on, who do you have then?
Jimenez captain, Podence, and Cody.
Yeah,
and got -1.
It's crazy. I mean, we just didn't see that Wolves performance coming either, did we? As well as City, that really shocked me. And I don't know why that could be. It's just one of those days, or whether there's an issue there. I don't know.
Because I was saying to you the other night, wasn't I? Wolves. I mean, they've made a lot of personnel changes. I mean, with Jota going, with Doherty being replaced with Semedo, and the left back situation. Johnny's injured. Then they had Marcel, who got injured. Now it's Vinagre, who there's obviously something going on with him and Nuno's. He doesn't fully trust him. I don't know whether there's just not quite right with them. I mean, that first game against Sheffield United made them look good, and now you see how bad Sheffield United have been since. You think maybe that was the anomaly, and maybe it's going to take Wolves a bit of time to adjust. But I mean, the fixtures are so good; it's still worth piling on them.
Oh yeah, the fixtures you can't deny those fixtures, and also the performance against City was outstanding, I thought, as well. So maybe it's like that sometimes at the London Stadium. Teams go there and West Ham have a good day, and it's
Luke called it, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, absolutely. He said that West Ham are one of those who can put it out of the fire, and they certainly did that day. And Antonio was great as well. We'll talk about him later in the show, but let's bring your team up then. Let's have a look. What was the points tally in the end?
What was it? 40. Let me get up on my screen as well. 46 was it? 46. No hits. I just did a Aubameyang to De Bruyne, which was the most popular move. I mean, the weird thing is, and I said this on Tuesday, so I probably might repeat myself, but like the kind of strategy with this team is 4 at the back, and to have the two best 4.5 defenders. I mean, probably Lamptey is the best, but I'm quite happy with Walker, Peters and Eiling. But they're not supposed to be getting me my points. My points are supposed to be coming from Werner, Martial, Havertz, De Bruyne, Salah, and my 2 highest scoring players and my 2 4.5 defenders. So it just sums it up. Really. I'm looking at this team, and this team is becoming more and more differential by the week.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know. This is it. I still don't think this team. I mean, I've moved Davies on now, obviously, because he's gonna be out of the team, and I bought Semedo in. He's a bit. I'll talk about him a bit later on in the thing, but he's a bit of a punt, but he's a wing back punt, which I like. But people are moving away from a lot of these players like Havertz, Werner, Martial. People are moving obviously to Calvert-Lewin and Jimenez and Rodriguez and that kind of. So I'm looking at them and thinking they're still not bad picks. Like there's still potential. You
haven't been able to sell Pereira, have you? Even though you've gone on about him, and even though he's delivered for you, he's still not being picked up.
Without Pereira, I would have wildcarded by now, because he's got me 10 points last week and 5 points this week. And my totals have been so poor that without him, I would be really down in the quagmire. So I'm happy with him, and a lot of people are going to players like Trossard or Podence and stuff. But I think Pereira, and really, if you look at the fixtures Pereira's had, I mean, Leicester at home, Everton away, Chelsea at home, delivered in 2 out of 3 of those, and now he's got a run of Southampton, Burnley, Brighton, Fulham.
He's got a very decent run, actually. Yeah,
I'm happy to hold him, and please, I kind of back myself with it.
Well, they need to pick up a striker in the window, and I think they will. I mean, I think they're looking around for a striker, and they're after various targets. But he needs that. He needs someone to feed if he's going to deliver regularly. But he's done marvellously for you, and he's got those set pieces, of course. Yeah. And he is what we thought he would be. He's a standout player. No doubt.
Just looks class, doesn't he? I mean, some of the passes he was playing against Chelsea, and he's the kind of player that can create something for nothing. He just, like you say, he just needs that person up front to be able to put the chances away.
They're after Grant, aren't they, at Huddersfield? He was actually pretty good when Huddersfield in the Premier League when they started him. So I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to say, but he's not catching on despite all the pimping you're doing for him. No. It's not quite catching on. But
and Havertz as well. I mean, Havertz. I think Havertz is getting better every week. I watch him play. We've got the hat trick in the cup. He had some really good moments, I thought, against West Brom. I think a haul for him is coming, so I'm reluctant to sell him as well.
He had a few classy touches. He got the assist, didn't he? He couldn't. He had to improve on that Brighton performance. Let's be fair.
Well, yeah, it couldn't get any worse.
But I did think at West Brom there were some touches. Obviously, the hat trick in the cup, that was against Barnsley, wasn't it? So we can't really read too much into that. But he's getting his confidence up. I think again, though, I mean, him and Werner need to be playing in their favoured positions. And I don't know. I watched Chelsea again, and I watched Werner again against Spurs, and I still Lampard hasn't got the team out that he wants yet. He hasn't got the players fit, Ziyech and Pulisic. They're obviously going to be starters. And until we see them with those two, we can't really judge them very easily. At the moment, they look a bit lost. Some of them, Havertz and Werner don't really know the role to play at the moment, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, the dilemma I'm having is that, obviously we've got the international break to come. Ziyech was on a stream yesterday saying, he's feeling good and he's ready, to play. I don't think he's far away. Ziyech, obviously Lampard's press conference will come in tomorrow, but I'm hopeful that kind of after the international break they'll be fit. And so it doesn't feel right to, I've stuck with them for this long, and okay, things have been going a bit wrong, but it feels like the best of them is to come. They've got Southampton at home, like first game after the international break. And like Martial as well, like his ownership is dropping. He's going to be down to 8.8 soon. I think someone just said in the chat his ownership's down below 10%. United are going to get better. I don't think Martial is a bad pick. He's got Spurs at home this week. I don't think that's a bad game. They're in Europe tonight. Then they've got Newcastle, and then they've got, I think, Chelsea and Arsenal. But they tend to do quite well in these big games.
The thing is,
how long do I keep faith for these guys?
Well, the thing is with Martial, he's got his sad face on. He's a bit like Wurzel Gummidge. He's got got a grumpy head on, isn't he, at the moment? So and I don't get that as well, because I was on the official podcast last week, and Julien Lauren was on there, and he's got the inside track on any French player in the Premier League, and he was saying, I don't know if it was on air or off air, he's saying that he was hearing Martial's absolutely flying in training. So he was bigging him up, and I was like, well, okay, maybe that's an ITK there. And then he had a absolute mare at Brighton, just didn't show up at all. So I don't know what's going on with him, because he was flying at the end of the season.
I know.
It's
I remember arguing with Andy about him, because after the restart, I think people were getting him in, and I was like, look, I just don't trust him, because it's only going to take one or two bad games, and then he's going to be sulking and not the same. And he didn't. He carried it on throughout the whole of lockdown, and then it made me think, starting the season, I was like, well, if he carries that form on, then he's going to be a great pick. And it's just so frustrating watching him. He frustrates me more than anyone else to own, because when he's just not at it, you just know he's not going to get anything, because he can't be.
Yeah, I wonder whether there's rumours of, there's talk of Cavani and players like that. I wonder whether he's got wind of the fact they're shopping for a striker and he's sulking because of that. It could be anything, but I don't understand what it can be other than something off the pitch affected him, because he was in such good form prior. And it's not like they had a big gap, did they? So very strange indeed. Or maybe it's just fitness. Maybe he's just not sharp enough yet, and maybe it'll come. We'll see. But I'm looking at that and think Martial, Werner, Havertz, these are players that could all crash over the international break. That's the trouble. You could be losing a lot of money.
That's the big problem, is that I still have faith that they're going to come good. But how long do you give it before they do? Because, like you say, if Havertz and Werner and Martial will blank this week, it's going to pretty much force him into a wildcard, because I can't lose 0.3, 0.4 or whatever it might be over that period. It's just, and Calvert-Lewin going up and Jimenez with a great run. There's too many picks delivering. So, I mean, at the moment, I'm looking at keeping them for another week. And then assessing, because I always said 4 weeks, international break, end of the transfer window. That seems a decent time to wildcard. So it could be wildcard time this next week. But I'm just really reluctant to lose them, because I just think they're going to hit. I got them in at the start of the season for a reason. I think they're gonna start delivering at some point.
Yeah, well, you got a conundrum, that's for sure. Yeah. Let's bring up my team. Go through it quickly. McCarthy got the clean sheet, like your Walker Peters. The 2 Liverpool defenders, Alexander-Arnold and Robertson.
Yeah, they're great picks.
Brilliant. I mean, that saved me. Dina and James. Dina got another assist there, and I got Grealish, of course, who delivered on Monday. Souček, who came off got the assist. Should have got a goal, arguably, but I'll take it. De Bruyne, Salah, Adams, and Werner. Adams got an assist at Burnley, so he got his first return for me. Werner was my captain, and he let me down. And I feel quite embarrassed, really, because on Sunday night I was on 24 points, and I was like in the trenches with the rest of them. It was kind of gallows humour. Kind of, we were all kind of suffering and struggling, and I was posting on Twitter. Souček got me the assist, but that's about it on Sunday. And then Monday, it just all went right for me. And I got 36 points. And then I felt a bit embarrassed, and I went quiet then. I didn't post on Twitter then, because I felt...
I mean, 8 out of 11 players returning for you, and 7 on your bench.
Yeah.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's decent. It's a 60 point. I mean, but my worry is that because the wildcards failed, therefore the more template selections failed, I wonder whether, you know, I'm going to struggle this week. In a week where City do really well, I've only got De Bruyne, and, you know, I know there's wildcard teams out there with Foden and Sterling as well as De Bruyne. So, and surely City are going to click. I mean, we're going to look at team stats later on and the fixtures for game week 4 and so on. And you got to think that...
the podcast over it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, De Bruyne should be enough, but I look at Sterling and look at that Leeds fixture and I worry. Particularly got the goals in midweek, and you know how much I like Sterling. You know, and so it feels bad going into this game week without him. But I'm going to.
What's Sterling's ownership can't be that high, can it?
No, he's low owned. He's still a differential for sure, but
6%.
But I see a lot of managers who are wildcarded going Sterling, and I can understand that, because you want a differential, particularly who started the season badly. Going Sterling and putting the armband on him. I mean, let's get to the great and the good, because I think that's exactly what Late Riser has done, or he's talking about doing. So we did
mid-table, Mark.
Yeah, we're doing all right. We're quite comfortable in mid-table, and we got the great Vila Ronco right behind us there. Joe, FBL Matthew, and Late Riser propping up the table there, and what's significant here is 3 managers played their wild card, and they were the 3 of the 4 lowest scores. Yeah. And that sums up what a strange week it was. It was so hard when you're picking from scratch to pick a team that, you know, you could predict would do well. On paper, you know, Wolves, Everton, City, get on those teams, you'd be fine. And in the end, it was only Everton who really delivered.
It's an interesting sort of tactic, isn't it? Because, you know, historically picking from 3 teams has always not really appealed to me that much, and having so many players from just 3 teams means you're quite reliant. I mean, Everton, you know, Brighton next and then Liverpool. So, you know, going into that Liverpool game with 3 Everton players and then maybe Salah and, you know, Trent, you might even have 3 of those. So you're going into one game with 6 players. So quite a few people are. I don't know. It seems it does. I mean, you know, I think backing City to carry on delivering isn't, or to start delivering isn't a bad strategy. But Everton, I'm still not. I mean, Calvert-Lewin at 7.4 just is a great pick. There's no 2 ways around it.
Stop going on about him. Look, we are going to talk about it, but I had all night. I had this in my head. Absolute torture. He's going to go up tonight as well, so it's going to be.
It happens every year, doesn't it? Every year we get a play like this, and when you put off getting him in, and then you look back at the season. You know, BlackBox next year will be saying, "Well, our biggest mistake, Mark, was not getting Calvert-Lewin until game week 13."
This is it. And I look back at last season, and I was stubborn with De Bruyne, and I was stubborn with Vardy when he started taking off. Ings
a lot of people were, I wasn't, but a lot of people were.
I stuck with Pookie and Abraham during the Vardy and Ings period early season, and I stuck with Sterling over De Bruyne. That one you can, Sterling over De Bruyne, you can see. I mean, I was just wedded to him, and I just thought it'd click, and it didn't. It did at the end, of course. But the Vardy and Ings ones were terrible, because I had Abraham and Pookie, and for some reason I convinced myself they would eventually deliver. And Ings and Vardy just caught fire, and by the time I was like thinking about getting them, they'd gone up in price so much. You talk yourself out of it, and that's the problem with it, isn't it? It's because
I mean, the decision we're going to have to make is, you know, if Calvert-Lewin goes up to say 7.7, 7.6, something like that, then you think he's only a little bit cheaper than Richarlison, and then do you go for Richarlison, who's probably got the penalties now? It becomes tougher, doesn't it? Like a million and that Calvert-Lewin, there's no decision. But when it's like 0.2, 0.3...
don't do it to me. I'll be up till 2 in the morning again tonight. Let's look at some wildcard stats. This is from Live FBL. This is Ragaboli's site. And what's interesting here is like those... there was 10.9% of the player base played a wildcard in game week 3. 83.8% played no chip whatsoever. And the 83% got an average total of 41.7 points.
Yeah.
Those who wildcarded got 40.59. So if you wildcarded, those managers, that 10% or almost 11% got on average fewer points than those who didn't.
I mean, I'd love to know if that's ever happened before, because you would think every week the wildcarded teams would get more points than the non-wildcarded teams. Because, I mean, a lot of people who wildcard probably, you know, if you're a more casual player, you wildcard to players with great fixture on that 1 week, and don't even worry so much about the coming weeks. So you'd think just by like a bias sample, it would be better, be more points scored. I mean, I can't ever imagine. I've never seen that like that before.
I've had wildcards like that where I had quite a few. If you remember the scout cast that I had with Joe and Granville, but It does happen, right? Where initially you don't get that bounce, and then over time you hope that you've got on the price rises. I mean, that's the big thing about the wild card in this early is team value. It really does boost that. So even if you've had a bad game week, don't take the positives from the fact that you're on players that will probably go up in prices over the international break, because City and Wolves will have a better game week this time round. So if you've loaded up on them, I still think you're going to do all right. You're going to do all right this game week, hopefully, game week 4, and you're going to do right with the price rises. So, there'll be people regretting playing it, but I still think there's you can look on the bright side. You've got to, right? Otherwise, you drive yourself mad.
So what are you holding out for then with the wild card? Because neither of us are playing it. Because you make it sound there that it's kind of sensible. Get your price rises, get your City boys in, good fixtures, all that. How come you're?
Well, you'll see when you look at my team later on, I'm quite happy with it. And I've written articles about this before where you kind of know when it's right to play the wild card. And for me, I've got to have 4 or 5 players that I want rid of. And I've got to see opportunities in the fixtures. So I've got to see, there's got to be like 1 or 2 players that I think, okay, if I wild card now, I can get on these couple of players early. And I think there's an advantage to getting on them early. And so those 2 criteria, I need 4 or 5 players that I need to get rid of, and I can see 1 or 2 players that perhaps differentials, perhaps like Sterling, perhaps a Harvey Barnes, those kinds of players where you think, okay, the majority don't have them, even the top 10k don't have them. I can get on them early by doing this. I don't, when we look at my game week 4 team, I don't think there's enough there for me to do it. Also, I look forward and think, because of the double game week and blanks that are coming immediately after game week 16, I want to play my wild card as close to then as possible so I can do more with my second wild card. It's quite complex, that situation. If you want to know how that looks, I can recommend Planet FBL. James did an amazing podcast about it in the pre-season. And it was quite funny because it's really quite complicated. And it was like, you have to get your notebook out to follow all the kind of variables. But he really did explain it very well. So I'm not going to try and explain it. Just go and listen to that. But rest assured, there's a reason why you want to keep your wildcard as close to 16 as possible to prepare you for the impending blanks and doubles that are coming very soon after that because of the FA Cup and so on. So that's what my plan is. Unless, obviously, if my team calls for it, I'll have to play it. But what about you? What are you thinking? You really are thinking going week 4, aren't you now? Yeah,
I'm really sure. You say like, oh, you just know. I don't know. There's a very strong part of my brain, the logical part of my brain, saying, look, just cash in now. You're 2 million at the moment. You've kind of clawed your way there. Now's the time to restructure and just go with 3 up front, getting Calvert-Lewin before he gets. Don't just be stubborn about him. Get rid of Chelsea. They're not clicking. Get rid of Martial and all this stuff. But then there's another part of my brain, which is always the part of the brain that costs me every season, which is saying, no, these are the players that people are going to start flocking to soon when they bang against Crystal Palace and Spurs. I don't know. The thing is that the fixture, the nice little fixture swing, I think actually happens after game week 5. And that's when Everton get a good run again. You still got Wolves. The Chelsea fixtures turn a bit. The United fixtures turn a bit. City fixtures get nicer. So that to me is better in terms of fixtures. But then if I leave it till that point and I've still got players like Werner and Martial, then I'm on 100. I'm on 100 team value at the moment. So
are you 100
another price drop, and I'm going to be under 100.
I don't think I've ever done that. I've never dropped under 100. We'll talk about early transfers later, but I really care about that. Perhaps too much. It's hard to know if it's a weakness or whether it works out as a strength. To test that theory is quite complex to do. But we must look to do that at some point because it's one of the big contentious issues. I argue with a lot of people about it. Certainly Joe about it because he's an advocate of holding transfers to the final minute. FBL General's another who does it a lot. But even those guys have been forced into early transfers this season, I think, from what I've seen. So it is very, very difficult. And it's not so much the price rises sometimes, it's the value drops. It's knowing you've got 2 or 3 players that are leaking or threaten to leak funds. That drives me crazy a bit. And I think by the sounds of it, that could tip you over for the international.
Well, it's nice when you look on FPL statistics and you see your players or whatever price rise that you use, and then you see your players in the green, because they're kind of climbing towards the rise. When you're looking at all the different players and they're all dropping, you think, oh, because it tells you something, doesn't it? It tells you it reminds you all these players are dropping because they're not performing. So you're not ahead of the curve. You're actually behind the curve because people are moving them out because they're failing you. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really struggling. I mean, a lot of people say they like playing the wild card. I think you said it. They like playing the wild card early just because it kind of gets it out of the way, and they know, okay, I've done it. I've got my team now. Let's work with that. It's kind of.
I've had seasons like that because I always find that taking hits whilst you've got the wild card in your pocket feels wrong. In that, you're not going to do a -8 when you've got your wild card, are you? Because you're thinking to yourself, well, why would I do that? Surely. And so sometimes I look at it, I really want to do a -8, and then it's like, well, get the wild card done, and then I'm free to do that if I want to. I don't feel like it's wrong to do that. I mean, some people say it's wrong to do an 8-point hit any time, but once a season I normally do that. Maybe I'm not going to do it this season. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's a lesson I need to learn.
Your famous, was it Fabianski, Balbuena,
and Murphy, wasn't it? Murphy from Cardiff. Yeah. What a rose gallery that is. Balbuena, Fabianski. The theory was that West Ham would get a clean sheet at Huddersfield, and to be fair, Huddersfield were pretty awful back then.
Yeah.
And I can't remember where Murphy was playing, but he was looking bright at the time. I think he was playing as part of a front two actually at the time. So it had some theory behind it, but I mean, I'd like to think that now I'm doing BlackBox, I would never ever.
Huddersfield scored, didn't they?
In the first few minutes. Pritchard, I think it was. Yeah. Oh, I'll never forget that. Unbelievable. Talking of lessons learned, let's look at them briefly because I have got one on there as a result of Werner because I couldn't let that slide. Werner, we sat pre-season and I was agonising over Werner. That was probably the main contentious point I had. The main debate I had myself was I had doubts about Werner, and I had a team with Ings in that I showed on this show. And then in the final week, for the last show before the season, I changed my mind. It's because I looked at the captaincies and I looked at game weeks 3, 4 and 5 in particular. So that West Brom fixture, Palace and Southampton coming up. And I thought to myself, well, Werner's ownership's 45%. If Werner flies and I don't have him...
I was so disappointed.
I know, and I completely bottled it.
You did.
Absolutely
ownership. You should never... I'm not even looking at ownership anymore. I mean, I mentioned it earlier for Sterling just to know how much it would hurt, but I don't think you should be basing transfers on ownership.
But it was ownership and the captaincy. I was looking, thinking... If I don't have him and then I go into game weeks 3, 4 and 5, and if he's got 2 or 3 goals already, looking really hot, they're all going to captain him 3, 4 and 5. I'm going to struggle to get him in because I'd have to sell 2 or 3 players to get him in. And, probably for more money as well. So I was just fearful of that. I was amazed at his ownership, actually. The bandwagon was huge, wasn't it? For a player that, had a brilliant reputation, but no one had really seen, no one had seen him in the Premier League. But what... In my defence, and my lessons learned here is like, don't be swayed by high ownership when selecting your initial squad. I've got to remember that going into the first game week next year. But in my defence, I thought Pulisic was fit, right? Because Lampard had said that. And so had I known that Pulisic was out for 3 or 4 weeks, which it looks like it's going to be about that, maybe even more, then I would have had that in my mind about him playing out on the left and maybe Abraham starting, which is what it is now. And perhaps, probably that would have been enough to persuade me that not to do it. But I just thought with Pulisic and Werner, they'd start well. I got both those players in. Absolute disaster, wasn't it? So that little update from Frank, it wasn't his fault because he did. Werner broke down in training, didn't he? We were led to believe. So
Pulisic,
Pulisic, But it was, those are the twists. So I've got to remember not to do that.
It was funny as well because your point in the first ever BlackBox was that one of your biggest regrets was backing in a kind of a player who never played in the Premier League before.
Yeah.
And and then you said about Werner and you said, he might need some time to adapt and all that. And I was like, this is very sensible. And then when you had him, I was like, you got ownership. You got against all your beliefs. It shows, doesn't it, that like little things like that can cost you if you don't really back yourself so much.
Yeah, and I was looking at it going, in my head I was thinking, well, I reckon he'll struggle to start with. I'll start with Ings or someone like Ings or Vardy or someone a bit solid. And it was Ings I went for. I'm not going to pretend I was going to have Vardy, but Ings has started well. And and then I'll anticipate that he's going to struggle over the first 3 game weeks. And then when these good fixtures come, I might even be able to pick him up cheaper. That is exactly what's happened. And I didn't go with it. And I know it's hindsight, and I know people will go, oh, yeah, you would say that now. But I did generally think that.
I believe you've sold him now, haven't you?
Yeah. I had to. Yeah, that's my transfer this week. I just felt that I couldn't leak the value, and I he could easily score against Palace. Of course he could, but I watched him against Spurs. He got his first goal for the club, but he didn't really convince. Again, he was far too wide a lot of the time, and he was wandering right and left. And I want to see him doing what Kane's doing this season and what Calvert-Lewin's doing, which is like staying central and getting in the box and staying in the box, basically. Well, Kane's dropping deep and setting up some as well, of course, but certainly Kane's having a good start to the season, and Calvert-Lewin epitomises a centre forward at the moment, and that's what you want from Werner. It's not happening though.
Well, Werner in the first game against Brighton, when he was playing up front, I thought he was threatening. He won the penalty. He was lively. He was, and after that game, Chelsea fans I know were saying, "Oh, we've missed a striker like this. He's going to be absolutely brilliant and all that." And then he has the difficult Liverpool game, and then he's moved over to the left. It's been 3 games. This is why I'm still a bit reluctant to sell him, because if Pulisic is back over the international break, then Werner is going to be back in as main striker against Southampton at home, which is a great fixture.
Tough, isn't it? It's tough, but I think Pulisic is the key, and Pulisic isn't going to be back this week. I think they'll give him the break, but I just think he's a bit fragile as well. That's the thing. Like, he has injury problems, and it's a hamstring, and he's an explosive player. It's difficult because I want Pulisic, and he's gone down to 8-3 now. But I don't know if I'll ever risk him, because I want to see him play for 3 or 4 games before I would take him on, I think. And by then he'll probably be 8-5.
Bale's in soon.
Yeah, I know. But he's in the same boat, isn't he? You expect him to break down as well. But so that's my lesson learned. I've got to remember that next season, not to be swayed by that. I've got to stick to my guns, and I really regret Werner now. And those who didn't go with him, well done, because it was a good decision, and I'm sure you made that decision based on the stuff I was thinking as well. But
I think ownership is a funny one, because I think it kind of works the other way. Like, I do like to bring in a player with low ownership. I do look to see if someone's low owned to kind of make that decision. I use that more than a decision to bring someone in when they're highly owned. In fact, I'd say the way I play is the opposite. If there's 2 players who are quite similar in my view, and one's high ownership and one's low, I'd favour the low one, just because I like someone like Pereira, basically, who finding the gem and finding someone who's a bit different. Of course, it can hurt when it goes tits up, which it often does. But it's still
it's nice to have 1 or 2 of those, isn't it? It's like that's why I've got Grealish at the moment. I really wanted Harvey Barnes, and I can't do that now unless I take a hit. And Barnes will do well, I think. And he's one of those players. He's low ownership. Everyone's talking about him, but not everyone's got him yet. And he's in the England squad with Calvert-Lewin. It's no surprise he started the season well, got good fixtures. So it's those kind of players I like getting them as well, because it's just that sense of discovery you've got. But with Werner, I just feared it. It was a captaincy, and we went through the captain matrix. And as it turns out, will people captain him at home to Palace? I don't think they will they?
Probably not. Not with Wolves against Fulham and Everton in the form they're in, and Salah versus Villa and De Bruyne versus Lee. There's too many other options, isn't there, this week?
So when we started the season, I looked forward and thought Werner would be a strong captaincy pick in game weeks 3, 4, and 5. I don't think he is. Maybe he will for the Southampton game if he bangs against Palace, but I just don't see it. Okay, let's look at some team stats from game week 3. So picked out a few here, highlighted a few. West Ham's crosses, open play crosses down to 7, which is strange considering they won 4-0. So they didn't rely on the width and the balls.
And they've been the most of the 2 weeks before that as well, haven't they? The most open play crosses.
Absolutely, they were top for it as well. But Antonio still had a blinding game, didn't he?
Oh, he is so good. He's just unplayable, isn't he? When he's in that kind of mood, I would absolutely. I can't play against the average player of football, but to go up against someone like Antonio, so fast, so strong. He's just brilliant. And he went down in price last night. The fixtures are still bad. I'm thinking when West Ham come out of these fixtures in game week 8, is it? Yeah, game week 8, they've got Fulham at home. Antonio could be 6.1, 6.2 million. Absolute lock-in. Yeah,
that was one of the factors in my Calvert-Lewin thinking, is because Antonio is a player I want looking ahead. And I might go there, I think, when the fixtures turn. But arguably, even when they don't, he still do a job. He has got City and Liverpool back to back, which it looks very tough. But he scored at Anfield, didn't he, last time out? So he can do it there. But They need. I don't know what happened with the crosses. Obviously, they didn't need them against Wolves, which is very odd. Fulham, by contrast, 36 crosses against Aston Villa, but Villa just mopped it up. We said, didn't we, Mings and Konsa would handle Mitrovic, and they did. I mean,
well, I didn't. I said Fulham were going to nick a win.
Did you really feel that?
I had a feeling, but no, they were terrible. So you could tell straight away. They were like, definitely not going to get anything out of this game.
But Villa dealt with Mitrovic really well. I mean, those Konsa in particular really catches the eye.
Well, that's the problem with Fulham, isn't it? The strategy is get the ball to Mitrovic and hope he does something. And if you've got defenders who can just keep a bit of a lid on him, then they're going to struggle. That is going to be their season. They're going to really struggle for goals this season and points.
Yeah, it's not hard to shut down Mitrovic, I wouldn't have thought. If you've got a good commanding centre-back, which a lot of Premier League teams have, in fact, most of them do, that's part of it, isn't it? You know, if you've got a Tyrone Mings or a Konsa, both of them in form, they were able to shut him down. Fulham have got Lookman now, so they've brought some more unpredictability in, I guess. They need to do that. They need to have other avenues of attack, but it was so one-dimensional, wasn't it? It was just so predictable.
Yeah.
Okay. Also in there, like United, look at these. I mean, 7 shots, very low for that, and their XG from open play 0.69, so that was disappointing, but they still got the win. They still found a way. I mean, it was incredible with Trossard hitting the bar so many times. Was it 4 or 5 times Brighton hit the bar?
Oh, it was just awful. I mean, as a Brighton fan, it was just such a painful game because the longer it went on, the longer we were playing as well as we were, I just knew it was going to go wrong. And it just, talk about predictable. It's like the better Brighton play, the more chance they've got of ending up with a loss somehow. It just happens. It just happens so often. Let's not dwell on it too much.
But Bruno again, though, he played badly and still came out with. I know. It's just like, and to pull it out of the bag in the final minute. Well, not even the final minute, was it? But I mean, fair play to people who got him in. I mean, you got your reward, but there's talk today. I think speculation he might have an injury, but I don't think that's going to keep him out of the weekend. And there wasn't anything on show in that match, but he didn't look on it at all. United don't look on it.
I think that game worries me for Bruno's sake, like in terms of not owning him, because I mean we called it at the start of the season, didn't we? We said Bruno's going to have bad games and still get penalties, and still get points, and that's what he's doing. I mean, United aren't going to stay this bad for long. I mean, what happens when Bruno's playing well and we haven't got him and he's getting points and penalties? He worries me not owning him. Yeah,
of course, but you can't. He's such an investment, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's the trouble. Like, you have to rip up your team to get that third heavy hitter in. And he hasn't yet done enough to convince me that I have to do that yet. But we know, you kind of know it's coming. That's the problem with him. You know a big week's coming, don't you?
Yeah. That's what I'm worried about.
Well, also in there, City and Wolves, we talked about them already, like 0.44, 0.4 XG from open play. I never thought I'd see City down there.
Yeah.
A home game against Leicester. We did say it was tricky, right? I picked Werner because I didn't think the Leicester game was an easy game for City, but I didn't expect that. Just didn't expect them to struggle like they did.
I thought they'd win it. I mean, Ndidi was out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Gabriel Jesus injury was a bad one because Sterling playing up front he hasn't got the same. He hasn't got the same kind of instinct as Aguero and Jesus have, and then they brought on that the young Rory Delap's son who looks good, but like they started like punting balls towards him like they were Stoke. Like, I don't know, the game plan was very very strange, really strange match that City game. And then like West Brom getting 3 goals in 20 minutes against Chelsea, like just. 4-0 West Ham. I mean, did it actually happen last weekend? It's like a weird fever dream.
It is absolutely bizarre, the results and the number of goals and obviously the penalties, which we'll speak about. But it was just quite. I mean, City just didn't really. They were looking around shell shocked, weren't they? What Vardy was doing to them, but it was kind of predictable in a way. I mean, they must have gone into that game thinking Vardy's the one who's going to be a problem to us, and yet they couldn't stop it. They couldn't. Their awareness of him wasn't good enough. That he just took them apart in terms of he knew exactly what he was doing. Get in front of the defender, draw the foul, draw the contact, not even the foul, and go down. And it worked. And
they had a brilliant plan. I mean, he was talking about getting on Rodri and not letting him play, and then the mistakes from Mendy, like which is just common, and the defence with Ake and Garcia just never looked comfortable at all. Like, you look at all the money that Guardiola spent on the defenders and how many mistakes they make. And Rodri, I mean, I don't know what I think about Rodri. Is he that good? I never really see him.
He's solid, isn't he? I mean, everything goes through him. He's a hub of things in midfield, I guess, and he has got defensive sensibilities as well. He can slot into he played centre back a couple of times, didn't he, when they were really desperate last season. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he brings to them really. Fernandinho is obviously a real high standard to hit when it comes to a defensive midfielder for them. So I don't think he's there yet. He's not the finished article by any means, but you still think a team like that shouldn't have conceded 5 goals at home. And after the Wolves performance, it was a mystery because it just, you never saw it coming at all. I thought they'd win that game. I didn't think they'd murder them. I thought it'd be 1 or 2-0, but just that result was
especially after the first sort of 10-15 minutes of that game, it looked like Leicester were really looking to defend and hit them on the break when they could. And I was I was saying in the commentators saying this strategy is never going to work. Like, they conceded already to Mahrez, like it's and then all of a sudden they started actually playing and really hurt them. And I wonder, I know the title of our podcast is about City bouncing back, but Leeds are a bit of a funny team to be playing next, because Leeds are going to go at them hard as well. I think they're going to take a lot of, good things from watching what Leicester did and try and bring them in themselves. And City aren't going to have any breathing space at all. I think if they were playing against a team like Palace or a team like Burnley next, who would sit back more, it would suit City a lot, and they could end up getting 8 goals and looking great. But I'm a bit worried about this. I mean, I've got De Bruyne captain, but I'm wondering if it's really going to be that one-sided for City playing against.
Well, we'll talk about the captaincy later on, but I think you're right. I think it's a very unpredictable fixture. No one really knows what we're going to get there, because Leeds have surprised us in several ways. Like the performance of Sheffield United was very different to the one at Liverpool, and so we don't know how Bielsa's what he's going to do for City. I mean, the thing is, we hold Bielsa up as this great manager, and quite rightly he is. And so you kind of think that he'll have something in mind. He'll have something in store for this. It's almost like when they won promotion, he would have started thinking about how he's going to approach Liverpool, how he's going to approach City, the big teams. Because he surely will enjoy putting his wits against Pep and Jurgen Klopp. And he did, in that first game, he did incredibly well. So you've got to think that this is a big game for Bielsa and Leeds. Yeah. So very difficult to read.
Did you hear about him getting naked?
No, I didn't hear that one. No, was that a personal text to you? Was it? Or was it?
Oh God, no. Well, no, I was reading a thing about when he has a loss. One of the ways he copes with it is he will take all his clothes off and go and lie on the massage table.
Okay, I was wondering whether it was going to involve his bucket, but I'm glad it didn't. That's fine.
I think that's probably quite a good incentive for the players.
Interesting. I wonder if he'll be naked after the City game. You've got to think he will be, but let's change the subject. Let's look at some team stats for the season so far. And we're talking about City, and perhaps they need a bit of time to click. Liverpool, look at that, top of all the major attacking stats so far. Just incredible. They've started like they left off, and already you kind of think, well, City have lost one game. How many points can they afford to drop? I mean, it's silly to say, it's in Liverpool's hands, but another couple of defeats, and it probably is, isn't it? Because you just don't see Liverpool dropping many points at the moment, the way they're playing.
No, I mean, in the most unpredictable season ever, I think you've got the most reliable team. Liverpool just the one consistent, aren't they? Like, everything else is chaos, but they're just picked up where they left off, delivering points. I mean, what's amazing with that table though is kind of the one stat they're not top of is the expected goals conceded. On top of that is Villa.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Was it 1.65? I mean, they're defending incredibly well, and that's what I'm talking about. Konsa and Mings, it's a good partnership. Cash has slotted in nicely. Target's doing a job. He's not spectacular.
Great signing.
Yeah, I mean that makes a difference. So Villa defensively, which is key when we talk about captains this week, because Liverpool are playing Villa. So it's a tough one to call, that, isn't it? So it's. But you've got to say Liverpool outstanding at the moment. What's worrying here as well is like City are right down there, in terms of most stats, but minutes per chance 6.4. It's not too bad, but when you look at Liverpool 4.6.
Yeah.
So City are like 7th or 8th for minutes per chance. You expect them to be top 2 at least, don't you? So it's got to. We anticipate it's going to change. We anticipate that City are going to click. Whether the Leeds game is going to be the one to do it, I just don't know. It's difficult to call. The other ones here I want to pick out is Wolves. Minutes per expected goal, 119.1. Way down there. I mean, that's second bottom with West Brom.
Yeah.
And again, that really plugs into the captaincy this week because I'm thinking of Jimenez, but that really worries me. But they have had, obviously, Man City, they've had Sheffield United, and then obviously the outlier, we hope, at West Ham. So Man City, Sheffield United, 2 strong defensive teams in a way. Possession-wise, City are strong. What would you make of that? Do you think we'll see Wolves climb it? I mean, they're not massive, stats beast as it is. Wolves always settle around like 8th, 9th for most key stats, but we didn't expect to see them down the bottom, do we?
No, and I mean, I said it last week. I mean, Wolves aren't a team that consistently plunder lots and lots of goals. They're, people can get a bit kind of, I think people kind of forget that they don't really score that many goals in general. I mean, like I said last season, they scored as many goals as Southampton. Jimenez, I think, had either 2 or 3 double-digit returns all season. I mean, Fulham at home is pretty much the best game that you can get. But like I said at the start of the pod, I do wonder a bit. They were very, very reliant on the threat that came from Doherty and how advanced he got. Him getting into the box and shots, and they've completely lost like a major source of their attack now. Plus, they've had to rebalance the squad, and now they're playing with Neto they were having playing with Neto and Podence up front, and now Traore is going to move up there and things. So things are moving around up there too. I think there is going to be a bit of time which means they're going to have to settle down and kind of regroup a bit. But they've just got the fixtures to do it. I mean, the worry thing is if they go against Fulham and just score 1 goal at home to Fulham and have stats similar to this, and people have got Podence and Jimenez.
Yeah, me.
Is that do you stick with that? You're putting a lot of eggs in that basket.
I am, yeah. And it is a worrying thing. You kind of expect them to have plenty of joy against Fulham with Traore and Podence if he's fit. And you expect Jimenez to get chances to get a double-digit haul. You're right. I think he only had 3 last season. He's not an explosive player, which puts me off the captaincy somewhat. So, that's really difficult. Interesting as well here on these stats, Brighton's defensive capabilities look strong. Everton are their opponents at the weekend, and they're both right up there. Minutes per chance conceded. Everton 12.4 and Brighton at 12.5. So defensively, both those teams are strong. They're not as strong as Liverpool, who are top of that as well as the attacking variables. But yeah, I mean, Brighton defensively have impressed. So is Calvert-Lewin going to have his work cut out?
Yeah, I think so. And Richarlison's an injury doubt. Allen's an injury doubt. I think Richarlison is going to play. I think Ancelotti said he'll be okay. But I mean, he's up against Lamptey, who's not going to make things easy for him at all. Calvert-Lewin, he's not going to have that much space in the penalty area with White, Dunk, and Webster all in there as well. So I don't think this is an amazing game for Everton. I mean, I'm biased as someone who doesn't know any of their players and as a Brighton fan. But I would be surprised if Everton got 3 or 4 goals in that match. I think it's probably going to be a much tighter game than that. So yeah, I mean, you look at Everton's first 3 games. I mean, they've had a relatively sort of easy run. I mean, Spurs were awful in that first match, and then they had West Brom, man sent off, and then they had Crystal Palace, who don't tend to offer that much attacking.
It's fair enough.
And Brighton, I mean, look at Brighton. They've had Chelsea and United. And an easy Newcastle game. So I'm more impressed by Brighton's defensive numbers than Everton's, frankly. Should be an interesting game.
This is it. When I looked at Calvert-Lewin, I thought the next 2 are difficult because Brighton, on paper, the stats say they're going to defend well there, and then they've got Liverpool, and you don't expect Everton to get too many chances there. So that's going to be an interesting game. It's another test of Everton's credentials, I think, and particularly if Richarlison's not playing. I think Lamptey versus Dina would be very interesting. I've got Dina going into that game, and I don't fancy it really. You just want to see Lamptey play to see what he's going to do to teams. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of Lamptey, the Brighton right back. You've mentioned him, have you? No.
What's his value?
He's just so exciting to watch, isn't he? And
being linked with Bayern Munich for 25 million. Yeah, right. Is it going to sell him for 25 million?
What did you say? 40, 50?
50 at least.
Was it Martin Keown on Match of the Day the other day said that he thinks he's England's best right back already?
Wow, that is. I mean, we're blessed with a lot of good right backs, aren't we? But I mean, you've got Trent as the absolute number one. Yeah. But when you compare him to the likes of, obviously he hasn't got the consistency yet because it's his first proper year playing. But when you compare him to Walker and Trippier and Wan-Bissaka, I don't think Lamptey is that far behind them. He's going to be in the England squad sooner or later.
End product he's not proven yet, but hasn't looked bad. His crossing looks pretty decent, and his pace and work rate is ridiculous. So we'll see how he gets on against Everton. I think that's a very interesting fixture for him. Some player data. These are sorted by expected goal involvement, non-penalty, and there he is at the top, Calvert-Lewin. He's haunting me. Just doesn't go away. 3.58 expected goal involvement. Non-penalty. It speaks for itself. It's hard to deny it, isn't it? I mean, what are we doing?
Expected goal involvement in this case. I mean, he's had 3 tap-ins, right? 3 tap-ins. So that would be an expected goal of like nearly 1, right?
Yeah.
So.
But he did it again.
Don't know what my point is.
He did it again midweek. 3 not so. I mean,
doesn't matter.
In the Carabao Cup, the first goal wasn't a tap in. I mean, that was the first touch and a finish. Yeah, exactly.
See, they're the kind of goals that worry me the most when because his confidence is just absolutely sky high. I mean, if the fixtures were easier, I think it'd be an absolutely no-brain decision. But I'm holding off on him until after the Liverpool match.
He could rocket by then. That's the trouble, and then he's out of reach. So.
He'd only rocket though if he gets a haul against Brighton.
If he scores against Brighton, I think he'll go up in price regardless of whether he scores against.
Oh, he's about to anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, but people will look at he's top of the points chart, so I'll get him up front. There'll be a certain amount of that as well over the break. I've highlighted Salah and Mane. Mane is third in this table, 2.78 expecting goal involvement, no non-penalty. Salah back on 1.79. Yep. And Salah's actually been disappointed. No big chances so far this season, other than the penalties, of course. The Salah and Mane debate, week 1, we were like, well, that's all over. Penalties as well. Yeah. No, there's nothing to talk about here, but there is now, isn't there? I mean, Mane's performances in the last 2 and his points has got me thinking that it's back on, isn't it? And a lot of people are now, if you're wildcarding, would you go Mane over Salah, or would the penalties count?
It's so tough. I mean, I think the penalties are still such a big factor that it's amazing Liverpool haven't had more. I mean, they had 2 in that first game and haven't had one since. But they're probably going to start coming, and then obviously you've got Salah taking them. I mean, you've also got Sterling as well at the same price. It's just the fact it's that same price. This is what we were saying at the start of the season. If it was 0.5 or 1 million less, I think you've got a real decision to make. But at exactly the same price, I still have to back Salah. I can't imagine having Mane and not Salah when they're both 12 with Salah on pens.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see him in the lineup tonight in the Carabao. Yeah. That's a bit strange. I hope he comes.
I think they got knocked out. I think.
Arsenal won, have they?
Arsenal won on pens, I think.
As long as Salah wasn't injured, that's fine. Trossard, your man down there. I mean, for 6 million, he's got to be a target. We've talked about him previously, but he really is hotting up. He's going to have his double-figure return soon, isn't he? He's
just great. He's just a great player. He's like Pereira, but he's got better players around him. I think he's an absolutely fantastic player, and he looks now to be actually playing more, not just getting hauled off at 60 minutes like he was last season. Yeah, I really like him, and the fixtures are getting better for Brighton after this Everton game. So I think he's a really strong pick.
So he's down on 1.31. Werner 0.97, not where we expected him at this point in the season, but maybe we did. We talked about him earlier in the show, and maybe it's not surprising he's not settled in yet. But while he's out left, look at that. Yeah. The names above him, Mitrovic is above him off the back of the Leeds game. My man Grealish is above him there, on the back of just 2 games as well. He's been impressive, Grealish. Lots of touches in the box. But we're going to see Werner shoot up there for sure. It's got to happen. Surprising to see Ings down there, isn't it? 0.93. And that shows the quality of his finishing. He's the quality of his chances that he's converted have been low.
Yeah.
So he's behind Che Adams, his partner, who's up there at 1.52 expected goal involvements. But Ings' quality shines through. And if you're going to get a Southampton striker now, it will obviously be Ings. But will Che do it for me? Will he justify keeping him? Difficult.
Yeah. As in, one of the things that there's 2 defenders on this list right down the bottom.
Yeah.
Your mate Robertson down there.
Yeah.
And Keane, who I'm guessing is Will Keane from Everton.
Michael Keane, yeah. Well, set pieces. Keane, yeah. I mean, Robertson is a surprise this season, isn't it? Because I think, and that's another debate, a bit like Salah and Mane. We thought that was never going to be discussed again after the first game week. I never really thought we'd be 3 game weeks in and actually considering going Robertson over Alexander-Arnold, but people are. People are saving
the signs were there in the Community Cup
game
because Robertson was fantastic in that, and Trent was looking a bit kind of off the pace. Robertson on corners as well, I think, is a massive boost to him. Yeah, I look at your team and I see the Robertson and Trent double up. I think you're going to have that all season, and it's just going to keep bringing in the points.
Yeah, and I think this is the point when we look at clean sheets in a bit. I think the emphasis has changed when you're selecting defenders away from clean sheets to attacking points. So Robertson is a key component of that, really.
Rinse Boy on the chat makes a very good point.
Yeah.
Just before we move on, then one name missing off that list.
Yeah, Vardy. Yeah.
Where's Vardy? Like nowhere to be seen.
I think he had two shots in the box other than the penalties so far this season.
His heat map for shots is the penalty spot from where he's taken the penalties. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Surely, I know he's a stats buster.
Yeah, we know that though, don't we? Yeah.
Not to this extent, surely.
No, and it's interesting. I think I was listening to FPL Wire, another brilliant podcast, and I think it was late where I was saying like he wouldn't select him, he wouldn't tip him as a select, and I think that is obviously stats based, because even though we know he's never going to have the big numbers and be up there, it is so stark this season that his reliance on penalties has been so great that you've got to say at the moment there are Jimenez and Ings, even Werner, who we expect to do well, perhaps above him at the moment. Which sounds crazy. I think if you're holding him, you're going to keep him. But would you get him in a wild card? You probably wouldn't. I don't think.
I don't know. I'd be tempted. A front three of Calvert-Lewin, Jimenez, and Vardy. Leicester's next two games, West Ham and Villa, both at home. Probably backing against him to get points in that, and then after that, you can move him down to pretty much anyone.
Yeah, that's the appeal of him. He's a bank, isn't he? You can hold him there, and he's not going to go down in value because he's.
That's when Werner might be playing up front again with Pulisic and Ziyech in. Martial might have hit some form. If I was wildcarding, I would be very tempted.
General had him from the start, and it's perfect for him because he can hold him until Werner fires, and then he can make that switch and pocket a million. Clever stuff.
Away at City, come on.
Well, you think you play Vardy in that game, and you think, I reckon I could get something. I wouldn't be surprised if Vardy gets something out of that, but you don't expect a bloody hat trick, do you? No, exactly. No, it's outrageous. Well, that moves us on to pens. We're not going to talk about this too much, but it's crazy, isn't it? The penalties per match this season, this table shows it, has gone up to 0.71. The previous highest in the last 5 years, back in 2016-17, 0.28. It's never got above 0.28 in the last 5
20
years.
penalties in 28 games.
Yeah, 6 for handball. So what's interesting there, like we're talking about the handball as a reason behind it, but actually there's just been generally a lot of penalties. And what's behind that? Is it defenders getting up with the pace of things? Is it, referees just being more... it's not to do with the referees, sure. It's just got to be about, attackers exposing defenders who are off the pace, I guess.
I guess the referees are checking the monitor, aren't they? So it could be something to do with, it could potentially be more... Be interesting if there's any stats about how referees more likely to give a penalty when they consult the monitor. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. It's like every match you're expecting there to be a penalty. It's
not quite that,
bizarre.
but it's not far off. But
No.
The news this week, of course, which I was just so relieved at seeing this, that the Premier League have come out and said that there will be a more lenient approach to awarding penalties for handball. Now, as we know, only 6 of the 20 have been for handball, but I hope it does reduce the number of penalties. And not all. They looked back at some of the decisions, and the Dyer one would still be a penalty. Apparently,
I can't understand that. I just cannot understand how that can be a penalty. Like his arm's behind him, and he heads it into his arm. I just don't understand.
Yeah, but the point is, apparently, if your arm is above your shoulder and it hits your arm, penalty.
I just don't agree with it. I just don't see how you can jump. You know, he jumps for the ball and misses it. His arm's going to be up because he's jumping for the ball. The ball then hits the other guy's head and hits his arm. There's absolutely nothing. The only thing he could have done, which arguably he should have done, would have been to have won the header, which obviously would have been a lot better for the team. But you're basically punishing him for missing a header, giving a penalty away for missing a header. It's so harsh.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're Newcastle, you've got Andy Carroll, you stick him on for the last 10 minutes, and you do just that, can't you? I mean,
I know.
You know, it's not going to... It's funny what Peter Crouch said as well. Like, if he was still playing, he'd be giving away penalties left, right, and centre. Very true, Peter.
I think the good thing. Sorry, I'll just really quick. Yeah. The good thing about the them being a bit more lenient, I think it hopefully will discourage any potential player just thinking I'm just going to boot it their hands. I'm not even going to aim for the goal. I'm just going to boot their hands and hope for the best. Like, at least if their hands are down and now it's not given, it's
Yeah, and I think we've got to be thankful for that. I do wonder whether there'll be more lenient. They'll be harsher on penalty decisions over this next weekend. You know when they actually make a change like this, it goes from one extreme to completely the other, and there'll be like some players chopping players down in the box, and the referee will be a play on. I wonder if it'll go like that, and then we'll be frustrated for another reason. With VAR, you've got to think that's going to be difficult, but I wouldn't be surprised if the number of pens this week drops quite significantly, because they'll want to show that the change has had an effect. The last thing they want is another 10 penalties, don't they? They'll want to go, well, there you go, it's all fixed, carry on watching, and everyone's fine and dandy. So
you could be right.
It will be interesting.
Have a look at that stat next week to see if it actually did drop.
Yeah, but the thing is, I was seeing wildcard teams at the weekend with full of penalty taken, and my head was in my hands. I was like, we can't have this, because we're out there trying to do this kind of thing and drive content. The last thing we want is just like, the only advice we can give you is get penalty takers. I mean, that would just be a travesty, wouldn't it? And yet, before that announcement, it was looking that way, wasn't it? And horrible situation.
I mean, you look at like, sorry to use Brighton again, but look at like Trossard and Mopé. I mean, I think in terms of potential open play points, they're both pretty similar. Yeah. But then you pay 0.5 extra and you get penalties with Mopé. So I think, to me, that he's still the best option, in that. And I think so. Kind of, there's loads of players. I think the only real one that's a difficult one is the Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin one, because I think that's going to be a lot closer.
It is tight, and people are making a point that we gravitate towards penalty takers anyway. Ings, Jimenez, KDB, Salah, of course we do, right? So we've got those players anyway. But it is those tiebreaker decisions on those players, And it would be a shame to go, well, I want Trossard because he's a great player, but I've got to go Mopé because of penalties. That feels wrong. You don't want that, and you don't want people going, well, I'm going to get like Norwood because he takes penalties for Sheffield United instead of a more attacking midfielder in that price bracket. It's that kind of thing. Not that Norwood's playing now, but that's what we want to avoid. And hopefully this will be a step in the right direction.
But that's the thing with this season. Like, before we've had, Ings taking the penalties. I mean, for 3 examples last year, the penalty takers were they Ward-Prowse for Southampton, Mark Noble for West Ham, and Milner for Liverpool, for example. And now you've got Salah, Antonio, Ings. So, good players already there who are now taking penalties. It seems to be a theme this season, as well as having more penalties. It's also the players we would have been considering anyway, taking the penalties more too. Whereas before it was like kind of deep-lying players or, players you would never have in your team apart from just to have... I mean, it's been with Jimenez and Neves because they've shared them before,
They did, yeah. Yeah, and Zaha's taking them for Palace now, of course.
Exactly, yeah.
So
Milivojevic was the perfect example.
Yeah.
He was like the ultimate player to have in your team just because he's got penalties. And now it's Zaha, and that's then you've got a player who can score from open play.
Well, it's Zaha until PVA gets back. Maybe Van Aanholt's going to change it all. We hope so, because then Van Aanholt becomes a really nice option.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
It would be really good, especially with him on Twitter and stuff as well. So lots of penalties. The kind of narrative is few clean sheets. So I thought I'd have a look back at the clean sheets from previous seasons. And it's interesting, like we've had 2 fewer fixtures because we had the 2 blanks in game week 1, and we've had 13 clean sheets. So when you look back to last season, at this stage, we had 14 clean sheets. So we've only had 1 less. And, and you look back to season 2016-17, we had 14 after 3 game weeks there as well. So to be honest, I don't think it's, we can say right now that we're going to have fewer clean sheets over the season. You kind of think that's going to be the case if the penalties keep up at the rate they're going to. But I don't think it's panic stations yet. But having said that, I still feel that having attacking defenders is the way to go now. And attacking returns is almost what you want from your defenders, and clean sheets second. Is that how you're feeling about it? Having benefited from 2 budget clean sheets?
Yeah, I mean, after game week 1, we were saying, weren't we, that defenders were the ones that were scoring all the points. Dean got a big haul, Sace got a big haul. You had Castagna who got a big haul. There's loads of attacking defenders out there. This is why, to me, it feels like the 4.5 defenders, I think, is good value. I think, Lamptey, Ayling, Walker-Peters are all good value at 4.5. And then you can pay more up to the 5.56 bracket and get some proper attacking defenders, which is why I like Semedo. I mean, I know his stats at Barcelona weren't very good, but he dribbles a lot, and I think he is going to have to kind of become the next Doherty to fit into the system of how Nuno wants him to play. I think there's some good options around the 5 bracket. So Reece James, for example, I think he's probably the most attacking defender there is at the moment. But if you're asking me, if I'm happy to pay the extra 0.5 or 1 million to move up from a 5 to a 6, like Dean or someone, then I am. And Robertson and Trent, I mean, Robertson, Trent, Dean and James, which you've got, it's very strong.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, and the way I want to hold on to them, because there's a lot of people saying, you're going to need Fernandes and you're going to need more up front. And I do understand. But the thing is, one of the reasons why I like having them is it makes the game fun, and watching matches fun. Because I watching Liverpool the other night, when Liverpool conceded that ridiculous goal and Robertson was to blame, I still thought, well, there's still plenty in this for me, because Trent's going to get something probably. And then Robertson popped up. I didn't expect that. And then when Chelsea play and they conceded 3, James was like running riot, and he didn't get anything from the game, but we got a bonus point, didn't he? From just supplying all those crosses. And then Dina the same, he's always the width. He provides the width, him and Coleman. So every Everton game, I'm going to expect a chance or something. And it just makes watching football more fun. And that's the reason we play fancy football, or it should be.
He's not got rid of Ben Davies, because he doesn't go past the halfway.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to have defenders that promise you something and keep your interest. It's debatable whether fancy football makes watching football more enjoyable. I don't know what you think about that. It's probably a big topic, but do you think it does?
I don't know. I'll tell you what. If I keep Werner and Chelsea get a 0-0 or 1-0, and Werner and Havertz don't do anything, I'm gonna have the worst weekend, because every goal that goes in for these other players like Calvert-Lewin and Jimenez and all these guys are just going to ruin my rank even more, and I'm going to be miserable. So no,
it's not what you want.
I don't think it does.
No, I mean, I like having a player in every match that's got a chance of getting me some returns. And the thing about clean sheets, and Joe says this, is that when the goal goes in, the clean sheet's gone. You want to have a hope that you can still get something, and that's what those 4 get me. And it's interesting what you say about miserable watching matches and so. I was listening to the Always Cheating podcast, and Brandon and Josh on there said that there was. I don't know who they were referring to, but someone said you can tell people who play fancy sports because they're miserable all the time. And it's like, there's a lot in that. I chuckled when I heard that, because there's an element of truth in that, because we try and play fancy football to make football more enjoyable. Actually, most of the time it makes us look at a match very differently. And I guess I watch more football, and therefore I think I enjoy it more because I watch matches that I otherwise wouldn't. But there are matches you watch and you don't really enjoy it. You're just like, oh God, this is awful. It's going really badly. And you're going to have that with Chelsea straight away.
Yeah. I mean, with defenders as well, it's interesting how much it's gravitated away from centre-backs. Because, you look at defenders, the points defenders scores. I mean, when Ivanovic signed for West Brom, everyone's talking about how much of a legend he was, how many points he got, all that stuff, and all those great memories. You look at his total points, and I mean, I think his best season was like 170 points or something. I mean, he's getting absolutely blitzed by Trent and Robertson now, and you've got other defenders now like Dean, who's getting sort of around, who could easily hit that mark, but I don't know. There's more of an expectation now on the kind of fullback players, and the way they play now is so. I mean, look at Walker Peters. I mean, Walker Peters is a 4.5 million defender. He is so. They play such a high line that he is like he's just a winger.
They are wingers. Yeah, like Robertson is that for Liverpool, and that's how we've got to look at him. I look at Robertson. He's a £7 million midfielder, effectively.
Yeah.
And that's why I really want to hold on to him. I don't know if my resolve will be tested. I'm sure it will be, because elsewhere in my team, I'm going short because of those 4. But I just want to cling on to them because I enjoy having them so much. Because they bring me a lot of fun when I watch them play. So.
Exactly. And I mean, I think Baines and Ivanovic, they were the anomalies.
Yeah.
But now, someone like Ben Davies, he's the anomaly because he doesn't get forward.
It's what you expect, right?
It's what you expect them, exactly. You expect the fullbacks to be getting high up the pitch.
You want to be picking fullbacks now to get you 10 assists a season, which sounds ridiculous, but that's the bar now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And Dina, James, Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, I think all of them will get 10 assists.
I hate that you've got those 4.
Don't worry. You'll see the rest of my team isn't quite so great, I'm sure. And then let's look at this now. This is early transfers, and I just wanted to talk about this because it is an issue which we talk about every season. And I have done a lot of early transfers, and I've done it again this week with Jimenez in for Werner, which we've mentioned already. You look at those dates and times there. I mean, they're all like early hours of the morning, apart from the Jimenez one, and that's 5 to 11. That shows you my habits. If I had one 1:15 there, the first couple I made, Dina and Grealish, it's bad, isn't it? I shouldn't be doing transfers at that time of night. But the key point here is the swing in funds that I've got out of doing that, and that is like the price rises I've gained and the price drops I've avoided. Those swings, it comes to 0.9. Jimenez in for Werner, Podence in for Saint Maximin, De Bruyne in for Aubameyang, and Grealish in for Pulisic, and Dina in for Vinagre. I'm happy with all those players coming in, but I'm happy that I made them early because I've increased my funds. So I'm up to my team value's not great though. People who wildcarded have got more. So
mine are 0.3.
Right. Is that your swing?
Just having a look at mine now. Yeah.
Right.
0.3. So.
Yeah, and this is what doing early transfers gets you. It is a risk though, and I totally appreciate that. And I know I shouldn't do it, but I just hate leaking money, and that's why I do it. And so far, I think I've got away with it. I haven't had an instance yet. Last season, it was the Martial one, which I did early. He picked up an injury, and I held on to him for 7 weeks, and it probably ruined my season, as we talked about in the summer. I haven't had one of those yet. But who knows? I mean, we could hear tomorrow that Jimenez has got injured in training. God forbid. But
well, look at people who bought in Gabriel Jesus last week.
Yeah.
Luke's got Richarlison and has already made transfers, so he's sweating on his fitness. I mean, Podence, perfect example again.
Yeah, Podence.
So many people moved for him, didn't they?
Yeah, that's true. And I don't see that as a major problem because he was a 5-5 player, and it wasn't a big signing. And most people have got a defender or someone like Souček, like I've got, to come in. But when it's Jimenez or on that level, when it's De Bruyne, you want to be certain. You don't want to take too many risks. But I just think the market drives me to it. And you manage to resist it more. What is it that... I mean, how do you sleep at night?
not very well. I mean, to be fair, I mean, you've really done a move this week, which has got you 0.2, which was... Werner to Jimenez. So that got you 0.2. I didn't even think about doing that. And then I literally logged onto Twitter the next day and I saw loads of people were talking about how they'd done it. And I was like, that didn't even occur to me to do that in the middle of it.
Honestly, it didn't occur to you?
Did not even, no. I mean, I didn't really want to sell Werner. I was still thinking, he hasn't scored in this game, but it didn't make me think, he's a definite sell.
I was thinking about that transfer 10 minutes in. Honestly, as soon as I saw him out on the left and how left he was, and
maybe that's the difference. I like to make my transfers late. I've made my transfers a lot earlier this season than I have done before. I mean, I had to get Vinagre out because I didn't want to lose that 0.1. I did the Aubameyang to KDB switch early because I wanted, I knew KDB was going up. But then my transfer this week was just Ben Davies to Semedo. Okay, Ben Davies might be losing 0.1, but Semedo's not going up, so it wasn't urgent. No, I get it. I completely get it. And I'm looking at people's team values now of 101, 101.5, and I'm thinking, I mean, I know I'm being patient with the wild card. I'm going to have the wild card in a few weeks, but wild card's not exactly much good if I can't afford anyone that I want.
And it's interesting. People say, well, it's not team value, it's points. And of course, that's the case. But when I look at it and go, well, if I've got another 0.5 in my team value that you haven't got, you're not going to turn that down, are you? You're not going to go, oh, it's not value, it's points, but I'll pick a team for 99.5 million and you can have the 100 million. You're not going to do that. So it does matter. But I think it matters to me too much, and I worry that. And I'm glad that you do things differently, because it'd be interesting to see how it works over the season. I'm okay with how it's gone so far, but I am wary that I am running a risk. And Podence and De Bruyne weren't brilliant transfers, but obviously I look at those two players and think, if Podence is playing every week or most weeks, he's still a good long-term investment. And I've stopped losing. I've 0.2 swing, which is good. So even though he didn't turn up, I still think that's all right, as long as he's back soon. But we'll see how it goes over the season. It's just fascinating that we're working different strategies.
I think my issue is, and I think it's different. I think it's counter to how a lot of people think, is that they're worried about not getting Calvert-Lewin in because he's going to carry on scoring and be too expensive and all this. Whereas I'm worried that the players I sell are going to start hitting form, and I'm not going to have them, and that's going to annoy me more than if I avoid Calvert-Lewin. And as I think about that just now, because that's just kind of come to me, I think that probably isn't a good way to be thinking, because I should surely just be going for the players who are in form and are likely to score points, not ones who I'm hoping that are hopefully going to hit form. I mean, if I wildcarded this week and I sold Havertz, Martial, and Werner, and they all banned, I would be genuinely devastated. But I'm going to be devastated if they all blank at the weekend anyway. So
but what have they got to do before you go, I feel good making that then?
The thing with Chelsea is that I want to see them, as I keep saying, I want to see them full strength. And I think that is coming. I think that is going to be the case after the international break. Unless Lampard is lying even more. It feels like you and Martial.
Well, this is it. This is what you've got to worry about.
I know.
Because Pulisic is fragile, and he's not going to say, "Oh yeah, Pulisic is months away," and I don't think he is. But you just don't know, do you?
The trouble is that it's Chelsea's games, isn't it? Because I've held them through some quite rough games, and now they've got Palace at home, then Southampton at home, and then they've got United away. So I kind of feel like, I think I said game week 4. So between game week 5 and 6, that to me does seem like a good wildcard week. Especially if I've got this team up until then, because then that gives me some good data to assess. It gives me some fixture swings. The only issue is the kind of the price drops. But you never know. Maybe at that point there's going to be some cheaper players in who everyone wants, and price is going to be less of an issue. Because I mean, like Podence, for example, at the start of the season there was no 5.5 decent option apart from St. Maximan, who I never wanted, and Armstrong.
Arguably never decent.
But suddenly Podence has created an attractive proposition. And also around game week 6 and 7, Souček's going to be getting some decent fixtures in. So he's 5 million. He opens the doors to some better players. So I don't think it's, I think Andy said it on one of the early scout casts. It's like you can always kind of find a way around it. I know, you might not be able to build the ideal team.
I don't like that though. When I hear people say that, I mean that's it's like, yes, there's always alternative players. But if I said to you, right, when you pick your initial squad, I'm going to go in and take 10 players away, but it's all right, there's plenty of others there. You wouldn't go, yeah, all right then, would you? So I don't get that theory that, oh, don't worry about team value because there's always other routes. Well, of course, there's other players.
Obviously, it's important. I'm not saying don't disregard it at all, but I think you can worry about it. You can worry about it too much. I think there are ways of building a team around you. I can name you some players at the start of the season who we weren't. I mean, Pereira now is a fairly decent option. Trossard at 6 million. You've got Mopé, Antonio 6.5. You've got Adams, who I hadn't considered, but now is looking quite good. You've got Souček. These are suddenly, I didn't think any of these budget options. I thought it was all about the premiums at the start of the season. And now suddenly we've got quite a few enabler type players who can come in. So I am worried when I look at some people's squads and I see what they're building with 101, 101.5. But it's not the first time I've seen people with high team value and manage to do well in the season. So do I completely need to chuck out my whole strategy of back Chelsea when they've got their full strength team because they spent 200 million and I think Frank can get the best out of them? I think United are going to carry on doing quite well. And I quite like my team in general. Am I going to throw that all away just because I'm worried that I'm going to be 0.4, 0.5 down in a few weeks? You know what I mean? I just don't know if that's the best way. I've never played like that before and done okay. So why?
No, it's fine. It's just really, because obviously, doing a show with you, we're finding differences between our styles. And I think it's really interesting. And certainly, I'm not saying mine's the right approach at all, but I find it interesting that we're going to do this show together and I'm going one way, perhaps a bit more extreme than you, and we'll see how it works out. Because
I'm basing a lot of my stuff on just stubbornness and fear of my players I'm backing delivering when I haven't got them.
See, stubbornness has been my problem, so I want to avoid that. I'm almost sensitive to it. I'm almost like I don't want to come across as stubborn, so I'm maybe jumping early, and that's a mistake. I mean, the fact is, there's so many mistakes you can make playing this game, right? No one's getting it perfect, are they? We're all making mistakes here, there, and everywhere. They might be subtle, they might be bloody obvious, but I just think the contrasting styles on the show here is quite interesting. So it's good for us, It's going to be
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, to be fair, I'd rather listen to you. I think if anyone's
it's very.
I mean, Sayu's vlog says as you're being blindsided by Chelsea, and I don't really agree with that. I mean, the West Brom game is such a freak game.
It was, yeah.
3-0 down after 20 minutes. That is, I know Chelsea haven't been great, but no one in a million years would have thought of that. And they recovered it. They got 3 goals and came back and drew that game 3-3 somehow. I know they're not right, but their squad isn't right. They're so unbalanced in their squad. And I just think when he gets those players in, it's gonna completely turn around. And that Southampton game, I just think that's such a good.
I agree with you, but the problem is when they do turn it around, I'll be picking up Havertz for 0.5 less and Werner for 0.5 less than you paid, and that's the trouble.
But I will admit defeat after the Southampton. If the Southampton game comes and goes and they haven't delivered, then I will be like, it will take a big performance in that game for me to keep them. I think if they've got the players back and they don't look right in that game, then they're going away to United. They're out.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I see on Twitter. People going, "You're mad giving up on Werner. He's going to come good." Of course he is. He's going to come good. He's a quality player. It's almost like the people who are holding him feel like, well, he's mine exclusively, and I've got him now, and you won't ever be able to have him. Well, I can. I just get him back and cheaper in a 3 or 4 weeks. So
yeah, that is how I feel.
But some people feel like that, don't they? Yeah, I might be making a mistake, but what's stopping me getting him back in?
I feel like you're a traitor now to Werner.
Yeah, well, maybe
you don't deserve him.
I mean, obviously, going up to Werner is going to be more difficult than going down. So if you've got Vardy going down to Werner in a great position, me less so. But I'm just saying that when people, get angsty about, oh, you've got rid of Werner, you're making a mistake, and there's a bit of that on Twitter. Obviously, I'm realising that now. I'm realising the darker side of Twitter. It's almost like they feel like, well, he's my player, and you'll never be able to get him back now. And it's like, what's going on here? Why do they think they've got exclusive rights to Werner? If they haven't, I'll get him back if I need to. And he'll be cheaper.
You sell Werner for Calvert-Lewin though, and Calvert-Lewin goes up 0.4. You're not going to get Werner back in for Calvert-Lewin, but then do you need to? Because if he carries on doing well,
I don't know. I think with Calvert-Lewin, we're almost half expecting him to hit a dry spell, and when we have signs of that, people will get off him. I think, and also when he does have a dry spell, he's going to drop quickly, like Werner has because of the ownership. So I don't know. You've got to play the markets cleverly, haven't you? And I'm just saying that I'm just surprised sometimes when I see on Twitter people getting, well, I'm in the Werner camp. Well, I'm not out of the Werner camp permanently. I'm just out of it for now.
You should be.
Well, okay, I should be banned from having. That would make the game very interesting if you sold a player, you couldn't get him back for 10 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Or for a period of time.
That would suit me well.
Yeah, maybe. Let's look at the fixtures because it's a long show again. Okay, let's talk through some of these quickly. So Palace, Chelsea. You're not going to watch that and enjoy it, are you? Because you've got to get something from Werner and Havertz. So you're good. If they don't deliver there, you're still going to hold them for Southampton. Look at your face.
I know. I'm stressed even thinking about it. I mean, the sensible move for me is, I still think, is to take the hit and just move Werner out for Jimenez.
Yeah.
And I'm not completely against doing that because I still have Havertz and I'm not massively in the Werner cut. I think if he plays on the left again against Palace, he is up against Joel Ward this time, which is fairly.
You fancy that, do you?
I do fancy that. I'm not a big fan of Joel Ward. If he was up against Mitchell, I think it'd be different. But I think Werner could get something out of this game. But I can't see if Ziyech and Pulisic aren't going to be back, there is a lack of creativity, like someone just said in the chat, in Chelsea. So I can't see them getting 3 or 4 in that. I think it's probably going to be maybe a 1-0 or maybe even a 1-1.
Okay, Everton Brighton we've already talked about. I think that's a test for Calvert-Lewin there. I think White is an athlete as well. I think that's going to be an interesting conflict there. And Dunk, obviously in the air, you think they got it covered. But Calvert-Lewin, he's got a leap on him. You just don't know, do you? It's whether the Richarlison plays, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, a left side against Lamptey with Richarlison and Dean is quite scary.
I want to see that. I want to see Lamptey up against those two.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah. Again, though, I don't think Brighton are going to give them much. I mean, when I saw Brighton's lineup against United, Bissouma was out. They played Lallana. They played Trossard. They played Connolly. They played a really attacking team and still managed to restrict the number of chances United got. I know they conceded 3 goals, but they weren't. It was nowhere near as easy for them as the scoreline made out. So I think whatever team Brighton put out, Everton are going to struggle to really get a hold of the match. It's not going to be a comfortable game for them.
Yeah, Brighton are going to pose a threat as well. How many times are going to hit the woodwork? Leeds Man City, then this is the one, isn't it? Man City, we expect them to fight, to really strike back, bounce back and get 2 or 3 goals. But it's what to expect from Leeds is the problem.
I honestly have absolutely no idea. I'm expecting goals. That's the only thing I will say, which is why I'm sticking with my KDB cap. I think it could be 3-4 to City.
No, you think it's going to be that kind of game again?
I think it's going to be that kind of game. I think it's going to be similar to the Liverpool game. I think Leeds are just going to go at them and they're going to cause loads of problems for them, but City will have just enough to get them over the line. I think it's goals. It's
going to go man to man, I think, because that kind of makes sense. And I think the key, Sterling's the key player, I think, because if I had Sterling, I'd captain him. If I had a transfer, I'd even be tempted to go Salah to Sterling for 1 week if I had the balls to do that. It's a real kind of late riser transfer, that. But he's going to captain him, and I think he could do well out of him because we know he can explode. And I think that at the start of the season, when we looked at the captains, that we'll see with the captain matrix later, he was the one we picked out. So I think City win that. I just don't know. We're going to get surprised. We're either going to get a 5-4, like you say, or 1-0. I just don't think it sits in between. It depends what Bielsa does. What's he got up his sleeve? Newcastle Burnley, not much to say there. That's got 0-0 written all over it, surely.
Or a 1-0 either way with Wood or Wilson popping up near the end.
Yeah, it's going to be, what's that, match number 7 or 8 or match of the day, do you reckon? Surely. Leicester West Ham the next day. Interesting. I think Antonio will cause some problems. You'd think Leicester, who coped with Man City, would cope with Antonio, but you just don't know. I think he's such a different, he's a different animal to any other striker in the league, that any defence is going to be troubled by him. So I can see West Ham scoring and causing Leicester problems, but I guess it depends if Vardy gets the pen. Harvey Barnes, I think, is going to do well again, which is going to annoy me.
Yeah, I really like Harvey Barnes, and I really like Castagna. I think he's 5.7 now, so he's going up, and they've got Pereira coming back, so it's probably going to be Castagna moving over to the left and then Pereira playing. I mean, Pereira's going to be an interesting shout when he's back in the team as well. Yeah, I was kind of torn between Semedo and Castagna. I was a bit short on Castagna, but I could have done it if I'd got Jimenez in for Werner, but I'm backing Semedo for some reason.
Yeah, Pereira could be another one of those 10 assist fullbacks when he comes back, but I don't know. I don't know if he's in the same bracket as Dina. He's up there for sure. He's got more goals in him, I guess. But Southampton, West Brom, Che Adams and Danny Ings, you've got to expect them to get returns in this game, haven't you? Well,
there's goals in this one as well. I mean, this could be a 2-2.
2-2? West Brom scored 2 goals. You think?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get much from Walker Peters. You're going to get your assists from Walker Peters.
Going to get my assists from Walker Peters and my goals from Pereira.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, West Brom are. You kind of think they're going to concede, but the 3 goals against Chelsea, you didn't see that coming, and maybe they are going to surprise us again. Yeah. And Callum Robinson could be the budget pick we've been looking for up front. Maybe it's not about Brewster. Talking of Brewster, he could be going to Sheffield United and they're at Arsenal. This is a tough one to call. I mean, Sheffield United have really struggled.
Is it a tough one to call?
Do you think Arsenal are going to? Yeah, last season you'd look at that and think Sheffield United would be capable of getting a result. This season,
1-1 something.
I can't think that Sheffield United have just suddenly turned into relegation threatened team, which is what the results say. But surely that isn't the case. What's going on?
They've lost. Not only have they lost Henderson, which I said probably wouldn't be that big a factor, but does seem to be. But losing O'Connell as well. I mean, he is such an important part. He's out for the season, I think, isn't he? They said. So
that opens up Ampadu or Robinson at the back, and I guess you're not tempted, even at 4-5-4-4, you wouldn't be tempted.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the Sheffield United centre backs have a history of not being attacking anyway. So if we're both sticking with the attacking defender strategy, then they're out anyway. I mean, I don't think they're awful options, but I wouldn't be going near them right now. I mean, if I had Aubameyang, if I still kept him, I'd be considering him for the armband this week.
You fancy it, yeah. Wolves, Fulham. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything up at Wolves, but I think there's something up at Fulham. I mean, I want to bring this tweet up from Tony Khan. I apologise to Fulham supporters for our performance tonight. We looked to add centre backs at Wembley. I'm sorry we haven't yet. 2 COVID, blah blah blah. He's basically making excuses and trying to win favour and apologising for the performance.
It's unbelievable. Imagine being the centre backs there. I've been cheers, Tony. What a faith in me you've got. Thanks, mate.
That's a problem. If you looked online and your employer was apologising for you, you wouldn't be very happy the next day.
It's. I mean, like you say, like they're so one-dimensional. I can't remember seeing a more one-dimensional team than just get the ball to Mitrovic and hope he does something. It's a great fixture for Wolves to bounce back from that West Ham game.
Yeah,
you've got it. I mean, all the sensible money is on a comfortable 3-0, 2-3-0 win. I don't know if it's going to be that comfortable for them, though. I think it's going to be more a case of let's just get the win and sort of go on from there. I don't think it's going to be a mauling for Wolves.
Well, if Wolves were in better form, you would predict that. I mean, it's hard to say what form they're in. They've only played 3 times, but it's just that West Ham result has really thrown us. Fulham, there's no doubt, are in real trouble. I mean, it was another morale-boosting 3-0 defeat to Brentford tonight in the Carabao Cup. So it's like... they're in real trouble. Obviously, they've got to bring players in, and Parker's got to hope their job. But people are talking about they're relegated already. It's hard to disagree, isn't it? I mean, as far as whipping boys go, Fulham are the Indiana Jones of whipping boys, aren't they? Really, it's just like they're going to get whipped a lot. I mean, Norwich were bad last season, and people were backing players against Norwich, maybe 6-7 games in. But these guys, you've just got to. We're only looking at him as captain because he's playing Fulham.
Yeah. I mean, the difference between Fulham and West Brom, and like James Stevenson says in the chat, is that Parker hasn't got the experience in the Premier League. No. So, West Brom, maybe squad-wise, maybe they are kind of relatively similar, but they've got Slavan, who is a good, internationally recognised manager. Whereas, I mean, Parker did an amazing job getting them up for the Championship. Don't get me wrong, but has he got? I mean, he hasn't got the squad that he wants for a start because he wants players anyway. He's working with an owner who's making things more difficult for them too, and he has got the experience to really know exactly how to get results. So, yeah, a bit worrying.
They've gone the other way. They spent too much last time and went down. This time they're just going to go against that completely. But same result, and it could be even worse. United, Spurs. There's a lot of beef there. It's a hard one to call. I mean, I don't look at that and think there's a captain in that game, but Bruno could surprise us, of course.
I'm quietly confident with Martial for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, why would that be? Just because the law of averages, he should do something?
Well, I'm thinking that United last season had a good record against kind of the top 6 teams and the good teams. And I think, Spurs have played a lot. They've played in the Cup. They've got their Europe again tonight. They played a strong team tonight as well. So they were at home, which is good because they haven't had to travel kind of around the world. But, United have rested all their players in the Cup and still got through. And I think Martial could cause some damage against Spurs' backline, which doesn't inspire much confidence, in my opinion. So I think there's goals for United in this one if they want it. Yeah. It's the kind of game they need, I think. I think they need like a more difficult game rather than, playing teams who they think they're probably quite complacent against. Like Palace and Brighton, they probably thought they were going to roll them over quite easily. Whereas Spurs should at least kind of spark them up a bit.
And if they click, I mean, that changes a lot of wildcards overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
If you wildcard now, you're not going to have 2 or 3 United players, but if they click and Rashford and Martial do something, suddenly they're back in it. So it could easily happen. And Villa-Liverpool, nice one to end on. I'll have Jack in that game. And with Barkley signing this week, I'm encouraged by that. I was listening to Planet FPL. They did a correspondence clash with Adam Hopcroft, who is Mr. Villa of the FPL scene. And Adam was saying if he had any asset going forward for Villa, attacking asset, it would be Grealish, which you could predict. But I was happy to hear that. I'll take that from Adam.
Yeah. You're keeping him in, are you?
I wasn't, but now with Barkley there, I'm interested in seeing whether or not he does anything to convince me. And this is a good game for that, because I want to see what Grealish's role in this is. If Dean Smith goes for it, then Grealish will offer some attacking threat. If he looks to contain them, Grealish will be more involved in keeping Liverpool from going near their goal. So I'm interested to see what we get there. But yeah, I quite like owning Grealish because he's always so involved, and he's always like what he's doing this season, and even more so, I expect with Barkley there. He's attracting defenders to him, so he's going to get assists just by bringing people to and laying it off for Hurahan or Lewis or Barkley to strike it from 25 yards and score. He'll get 3 or 4 assists like that.
Yeah,
really jammy assists just by simple passes because defenders are just swarming on him. So I like owning him, but Barnes is the one I really want. But I almost want to try and get them both. But what do you think there, Liverpool? I think they'll win that, but I suppose it's a clean sheet for Liverpool is what I'm hoping for. But
I don't know. I think I don't know. I mean, my answer to all of these is basically I don't know because
you can't know, can you? After that week,
it's so hard to predict. I think Villa will do quite well. I think they gave them quite a tough game last year, didn't they?
They did.
Can't remember what the score was, but I mean they're much improved. You know, the signings they've made and keeping Grealish and things. I think they're in for quite a good season actually. Villa.
Oh yeah, with Barkley there, it's a really good signing for them because he's like he takes the focus, and takes the focus off Grealish, which is what they need because it's too easy to shut Grealish down. Now they've got to worry about Barkley as well, and I think Traore is a decent signing. He's looked sharp as well. So suddenly they've got a bit of unpredictability other than Grealish, and Watkins looks like he's going to grow into a decent player. It might not be over the course of this season, but he's going to do enough, I think. So I like Villa actually, and I like what 2-1. Yeah, I think that's a sensible call. Okay, let's look at our teams then for game week 4. Let's bring your team up first of all. You've made your transfer. This is what you did on the Scoutcast when faced with your team and having to talk through it, which I'm going to get you to do. You were like almost reluctant to do it, like you were ashamed of them in some way. You don't really feel like that, do you?
If ever there's a sign that you should probably walk up and let them out, it's literally seeing your team and I mean, the biggest issue here obviously is Eiling at home to City. I really don't want to be playing that, but I mean it's him or Basuma, really. I mean, I guess the benefit of playing Basuma is I won't lose points when Eiling concedes loads of goals.
When it comes down to playing Eiling or Basuma.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, I think the rest of my team, like if you look at the rest of my team and the fixtures they've got, Alexander, just for anyone listening on the pod, Ryan in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Semedo, Walker-Peters, Villa, Fulham, West Brom respectively, and then Eiling, okay, terrible. But then De Bruyne captain, Salavias, Havertz, Palace at home, Pereira, Southampton away, Werner, Palace, Martial, Tottenham. I don't think it's a bad team. My worry is more about then none of them are in form except for Pereira.
That's the problem. I look at it and it's Havertz, Werner, Martial.
Yeah.
They don't go into this game week with the form that's going to return, and there's a lot of money tied up there.
And I don't think it, particularly Havertz and Werner, I don't think it's a good game for them. I mean, I'm 50-50, maybe 60-40 doing Werner to Jimenez for a hit.
Right. Okay.
Because
I'm not going to try and talk you into it because I want us to be different. So.
Well, my kind of from a kind of enjoyment perspective, I don't really want my weekend ruined Saturday at 12:30.
This is it. We're doing it for fun, right? Bring the fun back.
Yeah, and like even if Werner gets some points, at least I'm going to Sunday thinking, well,
it's a nice difference between us. So for the sake of the show, maybe you should hold on to him. No, I'm only joking.
Oh yeah, here it comes.
Playing the mind games.
I think I'll probably do. I think that one of the reasons why I like the idea of doing it is because it gives me some money to play with during the international break. So I could move Basuma up to Souček for example, over the international break, and then I've got an extra player basically who I can play. So
yeah, I did the same move, and I got the extra 1.5 million, and I spent it on Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Oh, you did it!
Yeah,
you
there you
rascal.
go.
You little rascal.
I kept it up my sleeve. Yeah, I had to do it. I had to. I'm
going to find this WhatsApp you sent me last night. The last thing you said to me was,
I know,
definitely not doing it. Made my mind up.
Yeah,
done. And you bloody done it.
Yeah, I was up till like 2 a.m, and I did it quite late. I don't know what time it was. We'll show it in a future show. I guess it was fairly late. Yeah, I just feel that one of the problems I've had in previous seasons is not getting on people early enough, and then I watch them go up in price, and then I'm stubborn and go, well, I'm paying 0.7, 0.8 more. I'm not going to do that. I'll just find another way, and I'll go and get Richarlison, and he won't be as effective. And I look at Calvert-Lewin, I think it's a mistake for this next two. I think Che Adams will get something against who's they playing now? Playing your guys, aren't they?
West Brom.
West Brom, yeah. So I think he'll get something in that game. Or Pereira.
West Brom, your guys. West Brom fans.
But I just think long term, Calvert-Lewin, I don't doubt him. I don't think there's a doubt that he's going to be a strong asset over the season. I think he'll have a dry spell, but I think the service he's getting, and with Rodriguez, what he brings to that team, and just Calvert-Lewin growing as a player, he's growing in stature as an athlete. He's big and strong. He's quick. He's hard for anyone to handle in that kind of capacity anyway. And the service is there. And the thing is, Ancelotti knows what to do to get goals out of him. He's proved it already. We're talking about one of the best managers in the land who's going to get goals out of this guy, and he's just going to soar. And I think even if he blanks against the weekend against Brighton, he'll go up over the international break again.
Mm.
And then he's getting out of range. And then the stubbornness in me is going to start playing a part. And I couldn't let that happen. I had to get in now and do it to stop that from happening, because I know what I'm like. So there you go. Have a go at me, whatever. But I think
I'm just looking at your team, and I'm just thinking there's no real weakness to it apart from McCarthy in goal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like it. And, still got the wildcard as well. It's as good as any wildcard teams that I'm seeing.
Yeah, so just for the podcast, I got McCarthy, Alexander-Arnold, James, Robertson, Dina, Podence, who might not play, but Souček's there to come on if he doesn't. Grealish, Salah, De Bruyne, Jimenez, and Calvert-Lewin. Yeah, I look at it and think Adams. That's the other reason I made it, because I looked. Even though Adams, if he returned against West Brom, I would look at Adams over the break and think he could go down again if he doesn't get a return, and going down to 5.8 would really hurt. And I'd look and think my two problems are Adams and McCarthy. So why not solve one of those problems now? Get a player in who I think is going to be a keeper over the season while I can, because I would have had to make several transfers to get him in if he goes up 0-1 again. So I had the money. It's too convenient. When I made the money, when transfer from Jimenez in for Werner, I had exactly the right money to get Calvert-Lewin, and I thought straight away, should I just do it? And then when I saw last night,
you messaged me and said, should I do it? And I was like, well, obviously.
Adams
to Calvert-Lewin when you've got the exact money.
I know, it's almost too good to be true, isn't it? Yeah, and I think if you put it out there, people go, of course, that's a no-brainer. But it's just the fact that Adams has got West Brom and he's looked like he's going to score. And it was getting over that obstacle of, I know I'm probably going to regret it this week and maybe next week when Everton play Liverpool, but I don't think I'm going to regret it long term. And also the knowledge that anyone playing a wild card now, and there are people like Late Riser behind me playing wild cards, they're going to get Calvert-Lewin. So I don't want to give them an advantage by not getting him in and have to spend 0.3, 0.4 more. Go now and shut that advantage down. That's my fault. So that's what I've done. It's aggressive. It's another hit. That's 3 hits I've taken already.
Yeah. Well, I think hits are best taken at the start of the season. Be aggressive with the hits at the start. Do what you're doing, and I think it's sensible. I mean, it's the same. It could hurt if I sell Werner this week, but I think the logical move for me is to back Jimenez, who is the more reliable pick, and before Werner's price goes down even more, and having Havertz. So I think I probably. But you've got the captain on Jimenez as well.
Yeah. So we'll look at captains now, and then this is the captain matrix we've been building as we go. In game week 4, we didn't have Jimenez on there at the start of the season, but we have now because of Fulham. Obviously, anyone playing Fulham should probably be in our thinking. So the captains that we had going into this game were Werner at home to Palace, Sterling at Leeds, De Bruyne at Leeds, and now, I've highlighted Jimenez at Fulham. For me, Sterling at Leeds is probably the best option. De Bruyne, I'm to be honest, I'm 50-50. Severt, we keep talking about him, who was last season's top scorer in FPL Manager for captains, has gone De Bruyne, but he doesn't have Jimenez, and he did say that Jimenez has that fixture theory in his favour. So I'm really torn. I'm probably going to find out. I'll wait to see if Podence is available. If he is, I'll probably stay with Jimenez. If he isn't, I'll go back to De Bruyne.
I think he was in the training pictures today. So
was he? Right.
Looking positive for him.
Yeah. What's interesting looking forward, though, game week 8 is going to be a problem to us. I'm looking at that. If you look at the captains available, and apart from the Spurs, Kane versus West Brom, it's really Werner versus Sheffield United. Or
I'll still have him by then. So
yeah, or
I'm sorted.
There's your man Antonio at home to Fulham. If you get Antonio that week, he suddenly becomes a captain. Now that sounds crazy, but I actually think Antonio against Fulham.
Yeah, I think that's like a tailor-made match for him, because Jimenez is a fantastic striker, but he relies quite a lot on crosses coming in from the right and that kind of thing. Whereas Antonio's just going to burst through those centre backs like they're not even there, I reckon.
Yeah. So
I'd fancy Antonio against Fulham more than Jimenez.
Yeah, I do. And looking ahead to game week 8, we've got Sterling, Liverpool are playing Man City, and United are playing Everton, and Arsenal are playing Villa. So all of those are really tough fixtures. I mean, you might back Aubameyang at home to Villa, but certainly it's hard to pick Salah. Sterling never does well against Liverpool.
No.
I guess it's De Bruyne at home to Liverpool, is it?
I'd be going Antonio in that.
Yeah, if you add Antonio, this is what I'm saying. So we've got to start thinking about that game week, because I think there's an advantage there to be had if you get on Antonio there.
I can't stop thinking about game week 8, yeah.
No, I know. Sorry about that.
Barely recovered from game week 3.
So we'll end on some captain team data, and this is why I'm worried about Wolves, because if you look at the top table, that is the attacking data, and below them is their opposition. And Wolves, minutes per big chance, 71.8. So of the teams with captain candidates, they're the lowest there. You've got Liverpool at 28.2. So Salah, he hasn't had a big chance yet other than the penalties. But the thing is with Liverpool, they're playing Villa. If you look at the defensive data, in terms of minutes per big chance conceded, they're right at the top, 188 minutes per big chance conceded. So it's a tough game for Liverpool because Villa's defence looks solid. And the same for Calvert-Lewin with Everton. Brighton's defence looks really good there based on this data. They're second to Villa in terms of minutes per XG conceded, 87.5. So it looks like the Leeds defence, along with the West Brom defence, is the one to go against. So City against Leeds does, for me, looks the better option. So I'm taking a risk.
Ings if you had him?
I think I would, but it is surprising to see there Southampton's attack. Minutes per chance, it's ranked 15th in the division. Minutes per XG, it's ranked 12th in the league. So their attack's not as high as I thought it would be at this stage in the season, because they ended the season really well. They were like 6th or 7th, their attack. They haven't quite struck that form yet. So
Wolves 19th in the league.
Yeah, 19th in the league for minutes per XG. Wolves.
So put me off him in it.
Yeah, only West Brom are lower than that. So that's a worry. So that's why I'm thinking I probably will play safe and go back to KDB. But
Broslow in the chat. Don't know why you keep talking about some random who had the most luck with captains last season. Come on.
Yeah, he's not. He came 8th in the world.
Some random, Jesus Christ.
It did him quite well. I mean, we're not saying he's the oracle when it comes to captains, but if you're going to follow anyone, he's going to be someone. You want to know who they're going to captain. Like we always ask that, and the thing is, the captaincy maybe above all decisions is probably the one that relies on luck the most, because KDB, Sterling, Jimenez, Ings, they're all good captain picks, and which one comes out on top is going to rely on the run of the ball, or it could be a sending off, it could be a penalty decision. None of us can foresee that, right? But what Severt did is he had some logic with it. He always went with the team with the weakest fixture, or the strongest fixture against the weakest opponent. But he's going KDB, and I think that's probably the way I go. I've got it in Jimenez, but it's probably going to change. But you're stuck on KDB, are you?
Yeah. I can't see it changing. Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I think the Wolves Fulham game gives Wolves a perfect chance to turn that round, whereas I think the Chelsea Palace game doesn't. So Yeah, I am probably going to make that move. So back Werner if you've got him.
We'll see how we go. That's it for the show. I guess you've only got one thing to do, and that is the likes and the subscribes.
The smash. Yeah, you might have seen our fancy little graphic at the start of the show.
There it is, popping up.
You're there, but yeah, thanks everyone. I'll stop again. Thanks everyone for listening. If you can subscribe, then smash that button because it does help us. Our subscribers are going up each week. We're now at like 5.5k. We started at 1k because I moved over from my old channel. So yeah, I only managed to get 1k mark, and now we've got 5.5. So
yeah, it's good. So it's getting there, and I'm enjoying the show, and we'll see if Az and I can remain different in terms of our strategies and lineups as we go throughout the season. You're going to go Jimenez in for Werner though. That difference isn't going to be there for long, I don't think.
I think it just makes sense. The fear I've got of Werner blanking and Jimenez scoring makes me even more sure that it's the right thing to do and not just to be stubborn and hold on to him. So yeah, probably will make.
And the thing is, I've paved the way with Calvert-Lewin. Another hit, been aggressive. I think you'll do it now.
I don't want Calvert-Lewin.
That's taking you by surprise.
He's old news. I'll be getting Richarlison in a few weeks.
You really are going to dig out that WhatsApp message now, aren't you? You're going to put it on Twitter, aren't you? Oh, you swine.
All right, games have started.
I have. It's a good night for me.
Good night.